Well, we all had dinner together, including Arthur and Patricia. It was Christmas after all. Pat was feeling a little ill, and went to bed around 11 o'clock. Sally also didn't look happy and followed her up about 30 minutes later. Charles asked me to leave him and Arthur alone, as they had something to talk about, so I went into the library for a nightcap. I could hear raised voices after I left the room, but not what they were talking about. I decided to stay there, as I had something to discuss with my brother too. However, I soon fell asleep in front of the fire. I was woken up by a door slamming, and saw someone walk past the window. It was too snowy to see who, but I assumed it was my brother. I looked at the clock and it was nearly 1 a.m., so I decided to call it a day, and went to bed.
I really didn't enjoy the dinner. Everybody seemed to be in a bad mood and there was no conversation at all. I could see Charles and the housemaid Redfern were angry with each other, but nothing was said. Eventually she went off to bed with a headache. After that, I hung around for a while, but it was too depressing, so I went off to bed too. I heard Redfern moving around for a while in the room next to mine, but then she was quiet. I wasn't sleepy, so I read for a while. Around 12:30 someone came stomping up the stairs. I opened the door to tell them to have some consideration for others, but saw Wilkes, looking angry, and knocking on Redfern's door, so I decided to drop it. Somebody else came up not long after. Maybe Charles, or Edward. I went to bed then and slept for a while, but around 4, I needed to visit the bathroom. Before I got back into bed, I thought I heard a door open downstairs, but I was too cold to go and look.
Yes, nobody was happy during the dinner. It was a miserable event for reasons I just don't know. Both Pat and Mrs. Armstrong retired early. Pat, at about 11, because of a headache, and Mrs. Armstrong, not long after. But Mr. Fanshawe, Charles that is, wanted to talk with me about a private matter, so his brother left the room. What he had to tell me came as a bit of a shock. He told me he no longer had need of my services, and was releasing me before he moved to America. I didn't know what to say at first, but then asked him what I had done wrong. He said I was no longer necessary. At that, we got into a heated argument. In the end he told me to leave the next morning. I was so angry then, I left the room. I went straight upstairs, and knocked on Pat's door. I wanted to talk to her, but there was no answer. I guess she was asleep. I didn't sleep at all until about 4 a.m. I think I heard Edward's door open not long after I came upstairs, and just before I fell asleep I heard another door open. I have no idea who, or where it was.
Yes, I was at the party with everyone else, but I wasn't enjoying it much. Everybody was quiet, but they all seemed angry at each other. I know they'd all had arguments with poor Mr. Fanshawe during the day. I don't know what the problem was. I am the housemaid and they're not going to discuss private problems in front of me. Anyway, I had a headache and a bit of a fever, so I decided to go to bed early. It must have been around 11 o'clock. I got changed in my room and was just about to go to bed when I heard someone else come upstairs. I think it must have been Mrs. Armstrong, as I heard her door open. That was at 11:30.
No, I didn't come up here after midnight. I always go to bed at 10 o'clock. Ask my wife. Anyway, we were both about 30 minutes late for work today because of the weather. We had to come round the front because of the snow. I went straight to the shed, but before I got there, I saw Mr. Fanshawe's body lying in the snow. No, I didn't touch him, or go into the shed. I ran straight back to the house and called you lot. Then I went and told Gladys to get the others up and tell them what had happened. She did, all except for Miss Redfern, who was ill. None of them were happy I'd called the police. I'm not surprised, really, as they'd all had arguments with him the previous day. Yes, me too. He wasn't a nice man, and to be honest, if this means we can keep the house, I'll lose no sleep over him. Anything else? Yes, I'd like to know who's been using my long boots. They were in the kitchen this morning when I know I'd left them in the shed last night.
Well, Fred and I were a bit late coming to work in the morning because of the weather. Also, we couldn't use the back gate because of the snow blocking it, so we went round the front way. Fred went off to his shed, and I walked around the house to the kitchen. It was 6:30 when I arrived because I could see the clock when I came in. Anyway, Miss Redfern was already there and looking quite ill. It seemed like she had caught the flu, so I told her to go to bed and I'd do the breakfast and cleaning. Oh, what's that? Did Fred go out last night? Oh, goodness, no. He was fast asleep and snoring loud as ever at 11 p.m. And that's the way he stayed until I woke him up this morning. We set off for work at 6 a.m.